Minnesota House and Senate lawmakers are busy negotiating, voting on, and finalizing pieces of the massive budget bill that has to be passed before July 1st in order to avoid a government shutdown here in Minnesota. Senator Carla Nelson is at the Capitol today. A piece of that budget, Senator, and something that was passed in the Senate focuses on higher education. Give me specifics about that and how much money we're talking about just with that piece.
Well, we did pass higher education, and we are so glad that we've got that budget bill complete. It's really focused on students and families and helping to make sure that they can afford college. And we also then, it's also important that that college experience actually aligns with workforce and what workforce needs are, and particularly those workforce shortages. So that is some of the things that this bill does, as in limiting tuition increases, sending additional funding to campuses such as RCTC, in addition to the regular funding. And then, of course, something many of our college students, well, actually, we all faced a challenge with over the last 15, 16, 17 months during the COVID pandemic was mental health concerns. And we additionally focused support in our higher education settings to help students who are struggling with mental health issues. And so after we've had a pandemic of instruction or no instruction in very different ways, we want to make sure that we help our students launch onto a successful preparation for successful careers. And that's what this bill does. It does make higher ed more affordable by limiting tuition increases. It increases grant eligibility for low and middle income families. And one of the more innovative pieces is it increases more of those, it's called zero degrees. That means zero textbooks. Students can get all of their necessary study materials online.
When we talk about funding and some breaks that will help out our students, the money has to come from somewhere, and so as we know, there's no free lunch, there's no free education, that kind of thing. So the money that is going to go to help out students and maybe faculty in our Minnesota higher education system then comes out of the budget, and we have a surplus this year. So I just want to know how negotiations went for that. Was it contentious? Was it hard to get your counterparts to agree?
Yes, well, and that's such an important piece. This year, one could say that Minnesota is awash in funding. We have more funding than one could imagine, and that's because the federal government has sent $12 billion to our state, on top of course, all of the regular, like $5 billion that they send in a normal year. So $12 billion from the federal government. And of course, more is on the way. And right now, Betsy, we have about a $4 billion surplus between our reserves and our surplus. And so the important thing, like with the higher education bill, is to make sure that the taxpayer funds that we invest are yielding long-term results. And having the highly educated workforce that's needed for the jobs in demand and for our workforce in general is going to help further spur our economic growth in our state. And I believe that it's economic growth that is the best way to fund government. It is by increasing the economy of the state. And that's what this higher education bill does.
Let's talk in general really quick if we can. I know that when the Senate gets their work done and then it goes over to the House, there becomes a lot more sticky issues, shall we say, before anything reaches the governor's desk. So do you have any idea? Have you heard any of your Republican House members talking about what they're willing to do with this piece in particular? Is this one an easy piece of the budget puzzle?
Yes, this bill was one of the ones that was agreed upon earlier than most. The higher education bill has great bipartisan support, and we do not anticipate any major challenges over in the House, although, one never knows. One never knows what's going to happen. Now, I will tell you, in regards to the tax bill, I'm the tax chair, and so I've been intricately involved with the tax bill. That must originate in the House. It must, because it raises revenue. In this case, it does not raise revenue. Actually, it provides about $1 billion of tax reductions. But according to our Constitution, that bill, the tax bill, needs to originate in the House. So the House will pass the tax bill over to the Senate, and it will be, as they call it, the last train out of the station. And that is where we could see additional issues added in. We hope not. These bills have been tightly negotiated, good, strong bipartisan agreements, particularly the tax bill. And I'm just very pleased to say that under the negotiated tax bill, there will not be tax increases on Minnesotans, many who are still struggling from the pandemic.
Senator, can I get you to hang on with me for just 2 minutes? We'll take a quick break and we'll come back and talk about some of the other budget issues that are happening in St. Paul. We'll be right back.
Yeah.
Senator Carla Nelson is in St. Paul as the Republican-led Senate is voting on key budget items, including, as we heard before the break, higher education and a jobs and employment piece of the budget that is said to aid the state's economic recovery post-COVID. Before we get to that, though, Carla, I do want to talk a little bit about the governor. 2 weeks ago, I interviewed him. Then the following Monday, we aired an interview that I did with Representative Tina Liebling, and they also are saying that budget talks in the special session was expected to go well, and we were going to avoid a shutdown. Now, here we are 2 weeks after I had those conversations, and it's looking better. I know that you are very optimistic. A lot of bills getting passed in the Senate. Where do you stand on the overall temperament in this special session as things stand today?
Well, number one, Betsy, I do not believe that there will be a government shutdown. I do not think that that is in anyone's interest, and I am unaware of any legislators, any elected officials who believe that is something that we should pursue. Now, some people might think, well, I remember a government shutdown from a few years ago, and we didn't even miss the state government. Well, one must be clear that the 2017 Minnesota Supreme Court case altered that in stating that never again would the Supreme Court be that so-called special paymaster that would appropriate state funding. In other words, if the budget is not approved on July 1, there would be no state funding for state services. That would include those necessary things that imagine not having prison guards or state patrol or many others. But this is we're in a very different time than we were several years ago. In the Supreme Court case, a Supreme Court ruling made that very clear. And I think the thing with legislators that I have found is they will always negotiate till the clock ends. And as you know, for years, I've had end last minute lawmaking. Our Constitution told us 165 years ago when our adjournment date would be. It was written right into our Constitution. And so let's back up from that and bargain and a compromise bargain accordingly. And talking to professional negotiators who do this for a full-time living, they tell me, well, Carla, people will always negotiate till the last minute on the clock. Well, the clock has been moved up here. June 30th is the last minute on the clock. And so I do firmly expect agreements before then. I do not expect a government shutdown. It would not be in anyone's best interest. It would be quite dangerous and damaging to Minnesotans. And I would say negotiations have been going very well. As I said, the tax bill was negotiated and agreed to over a week ago. And that's unusual for the tax bill, but there was just great, strong bipartisan support in this time of really empowering Minnesotans and sparking economic growth.
And dealing with a budget surplus, then it shouldn't be as contentious.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right, Betsy. Because sometimes there are hard-fought positions over funding, and in this particular session, these are not funding issues. These are funding. We have the money. It's not about more money. It's not about raising taxes, which is an ongoing issue at the Capitol. It's not about that. But there are some policy issues, and there's great differences in policy. And I have just encouraged my colleagues, set that aside. Next year is the policy year. This is the year we must set the next 2-year biennial state budget. And so we need to make sure that the budget we compromise on, that we agree to, actually does empower Minnesotans, spur economic growth, and move Minnesota forward. And we are moving in that direction. I am confident, I am optimistic. There will continue to be budget agreements, and the budget will be set by June 30th.
All right, Senator Nelson, tell me about the jobs and employment piece of this budget. This pandemic hurt so many of our businesses, and people, we're in a tight job market. A lot of these companies need workers. So how does this help them?
Oh, yes, that is a problem. We see businesses that are trying to open, but they've had to reduce their hours because they cannot get the workers that they need. And one of the reasons they can't get the workers they need is because we have a vast child care shortage. It is a crisis. You have moms or dads that want to go back to work, but there is no one to take care of their child or children. This jobs bill does make some inroads into that. It provides money to the MIFs, those Minnesota Initiative Foundations, to provide child care stabilization grants to try and keep those child care settings employed. We've lost significant numbers of child care providers, particularly in the home child care. And so this helps. This will help with those child care grants. And MIF has done that before with some child care grants that we did a couple years ago that have been incredibly helpful. So we do that. It also has a significant funding for the Main Street Economic Revitalization Plan, which is funding directly to help those brick and mortar businesses on our main streets who have suffered greatly through this pandemic and its closures. In addition, there's also some very local things that have great impacts when it comes to filling job vacancies as well. And that is the very successful Bridges to Healthcare. We have been doing that for a number of years, and I am glad to see that partnership between Mayo Clinic, the public schools, has really been funded again. And this opens up healthcare opportunities and room for advancement for students who might not normally get that. So Bridges to Healthcare has been highly successful, and I'm glad to see that was funded again.
Senator Nelson, I do appreciate it. Lots more to talk about. Hopefully things will get wrapped up before the July 1st deadline. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Betsy.